One of the best predictors of how well a child learns to read is how many books they have access to. And yet the state of California is dead last nationwide when it comes to spending on school libraries. So when one woman saw how some of LA's poorest schools have only one book per child, she went to work. Rebecca Constantino started a program called Project Access Books. Tony Guignard caught up with her at her South LA warehouse.
We have cases of these that someone donated that you could read as a class.
On any given day, this nondescript warehouse in South Los Angeles becomes a literary command center of sorts. It is ground zero in a battle to get books for leisure reading into the hands of inner-city children, many of whom have never had a book of their own.
We have instilled in these kids from a very early age, reading is something you do for the teacher, reading is something you do and get evaluated on, and reading is something that is painful. Instead of reading is a joy, reading is an escape, reading is going to do so many things for you. Have you girls found things that you want, that you like? Any books?
Oh, I found one for my niece.
Only one? Oh, come on, you got to go home with more than one. That's unacceptable, one.
This warehouse is the home of Access Books, an organization that collects donated books from affluent schools and purchases new books from publishers to stock libraries in inner-city schools. It's an all-volunteer effort. The collecting, sorting, and cataloging of books is led by Rebecca Constantino.
Great. How many students in your class?
Well, there's one group of about between 8 and 10 students, and they've exhausted the library selection that we have.
So you should take at least 3 cases, 3 boxes of books.
All right.
Injustice drives me.
In Constantino's eyes, injustice is defined in part as the limited access to books given children in low-income neighborhoods.
I did a study where I went into 40 homes in Watts, 40 homes in Compton, and 40 homes in Beverly Hills. And I just counted the number of books to which they had access. The children in Beverly Hills had 400 times more books. And that enraged me because not only did they have great books at home, they had a fabulous public library and they had a fabulous school library.
Rather than just complain about the problem, she founded the organization Access Books in 1999.
She just wants to see people succeed. She wants to see kids succeed. I mean, what drives her is if you see those kids, when they get books that they own that are theirs, that's all that you need to drive you to do something like this.
Melissa Lubashka is a 3rd grade public school teacher. On this day, she's working as a volunteer, but she gets something back in exchange for her work. She'll be able to take a supply of books back to her school.
Access Books gives comic books to teachers to have in their classrooms, and a lot of teachers don't have them, but especially with boys that age, 3rd grade.
And you should take cases of comic books and all those magazines.
That's what they want to be reading. A lot of teachers don't have it, but because they think it's not real books. But the vocabulary is so much higher even than the books at a 3rd grade level. So I would see my boys trading comic books and talking about it, and their reading scores jumped so high just by being exposed to the comic books.
People say, oh, you know, they're not interested in books, these kids, they're not going to read those books. I have never once gone into a community, any community, wealthy or poor, that kids didn't want books.
Just days after meeting Constantino, we caught up with her during an assembly at St. Michael's School in South Los Angeles for a celebration of books and reading. The private school has 280 students, but the library was stocked with fewer than 300 books. Constantino and her team of volunteers from Access Books delivered 500 books for the students to take home and 6,000 books for the library.
We went on a Saturday and we painted the walls and fixed the place and carried books.
What does it look like now compared to how it looked then?
It looks nice and better than before.
Most of the shelves were empty.
And now?
They're all filled up.
While the school has a library, it no longer has a library budget. So for years, students have had to make do with the books already on the shelves. And in some cases, that means checking out books that were published and purchased more than 30 years ago.
The school didn't even have an encyclopedia that they could go to.
Sister Carol Ward, St. Michael's principal.
This is not an area where a child would walk to a neighborhood library, where mom and dad would have the finances to have a huge set of books at home. So what they have at school is really their access point to be able to have reading materials. So to have somebody come in here and provide books that they can take home and can also read in a beautiful environment is huge.
Access Books also gave the library a new look, transforming it into an inviting place for students to go and enjoy reading a book for pleasure.
We didn't have many books, and the walls were like scratched, and the paint that we used to have on the wall were all off, and it didn't look good.
And now?
It looks beautiful.
It is a reason to celebrate. So before a backdrop of donated books, Constantino takes on the role of cheerleader, as if daring students not to be excited about reading. The brief assembly is over within minutes, but in those few minutes, Constantino hopes she has in some way sparked an interest in reading that youngsters may carry with them for the rest of their lives.
I like to read action, like Harry Potter, the books by John Dolores, and a series of unfortunate events. I love a series of unfortunate events.
What is it about opening up a book that makes you so excited? You're obviously excited.
Because you're never gonna know what's gonna happen next. You never ever know. But the funnest part is actually trying to guess what's gonna happen next.
Well, I feel like I enter another world where this is the book you're reading and you have to become one of the characters inside the book.
Is it fun?
Yeah, real fun to read.
Constantino's research shows students learn to read by reading. It may appear to be a simple conclusion, but when books aren't available, it becomes a complicated situation.
I like to feel that I do this research, but then I put my money where my mouth is. And I don't want to sit back and wring my hands and say, oh, isn't it sad? It's so terrible. I want to say, yeah, but look at all these books that we could bring to them, and look at what we could do with the help of a lot of volunteers.
But the volunteers take little time to celebrate the donation of books to one school because there are so many other students at other schools waiting for books of their own.
Yeah. You know what? We give them each a book before each vacation.
Okay, each person inspired by seeing for themselves how important a simple book can be in the eyes of a child.
Because books, you can let your mind soar. Anybody can watch a movie, it's just pictures. But when you read a book, you can show what happens. You have control.
If you've got books to donate or would like to learn more about Project Access Books, you can go to their website at accessbooks.net.